Hi, readers. I'm Lori. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. If you're here for the first time, I hope that you enjoy this video and some of the others that I have on my backlist. Today, I'm super excited because it's still the first week of June, essentially, kind of, and I'm in the wire, so to speak, of getting the June most anticipated reads list off the ground for me. Now, you've probably seen other people's anticipated reads lists too, so they may be very similar, they may be different. I have not really watched a lot of them yet. Most of this information comes from research, so it is probable that many of us are looking at some of the same books, but hopefully you'll find something out today that you didn't know, and hopefully you'll enjoy the video no matter what. So let's get started. So let's talk about one of them that is not coming out till June 20th, but it's already on its way to me because it was a new release, early release through Book of the Month Club. So it was one of my selections, and that's The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. I read The Push by this author a few years ago now when it came out, and I did enjoy it very much. It was a very challenging and unique plot, I thought, and I think that this one is too. So this story is about a family named the Loverleys. Whitney is the mother, and they live in a community of other parents or other couples who are not yet parents. And their son, Xavier, is in a coma because he fell out of his window in the middle of the night. Whitney is not speaking to anyone, apparently, as a result of this injury. And each neighbor kind of has their own internal processing, if you will, about what's happened to this child and about their own kind of experiences with children or without having children, and just what they notice and what they're, it doesn't say that they each have kind of a role to play, but it does talk about some of their regrets or some of the things that happen that they're mindful of. And it's told in the perspective of all of the mothers in this scenario and this on this street nearby. So it sounds absolutely fascinating to me, and I probably will read it very quickly after it arrives at my house. All right, now I'll attempt to get to each of these in the order in which they will be released. So the first one on my list, I'm really anticipating highly, but I've never read anything by this author, who is S.A. Cosby. I have Razorblade Tears. It is on my list of things to get back to because I started it and just kind of stalled in it for whatever reason. The plot of this, to me, is significant because it's relevant to current situations that we are noticing all around the country. But even more so for me, it's set in the American South. I'm not sure exactly where. The main character in this novel, did I say the title of it? All the Sinners Bleed is the name of the book. I can't remember now if I said the title of it. The main character of this novel is Titus, who is a former FBI agent, and I think he did some Secret Service protection or some kind of work in that regard. And he ran for sheriff in his community. And a year from the day that he was elected sheriff, there was a school shooting. And during the shooting, a teacher is killed by the shooter, who is a former student. The synopsis declares that the former student has perhaps been abused by the dead teacher. I don't want to know a whole lot more than that, but I do know that this story explores school shootings and gun violence. It explores the racism that is still prevalent, heavily prevalent in the South. It explores the experiences of a Black sheriff in a town in which perhaps that was not championed by everyone in the community. And I just think it has a lot of uncomfortable topics that I really enjoy when a writer tackles those and really shows us a portrait of something that we maybe are seeing played out on the news, but we're not seeing it from the point of view necessarily of the people who are involved and the situations that are going to, kind of be portrayed in this fictional account of a school shooting. I think at this point, sadly, we're all kind of impacted by this current situation that we find ourselves in the United States. So I think this is relevant. I think it will be rich. And I had no issue with S.A. Cosby's writing or his plot development. I just got lost in a myriad of other things at that time. So I would like to pick this one up as well as go back to Razorblade Tears. So maybe I'll do them back to back. The Paris Daughter by Kristen Hamill comes out on June 6th as well. This is historical fiction set in 1939. Elise and Juliet, who are good friends, find themselves in the thick of the occupation, and they are slightly different in terms of threat because Elise is being threatened by German occupation. I would assume she's Jewish, but I'm not certain of that. Elise entrusts her young daughter to Juliet. Juliet has a bookshop and she feels as though her daughter will be safe with her, and she flees Paris. Years later, she discovers that the bookshop was bombed. No one has any idea of what happened to her daughter. She and Juliet are reunited. I think the discovery of what happened then begins, and so the novel is probably set into slightly different timelines. I think that this is an interesting plot. Sounds like a difficult novel. I've never read anything by this author, but she's been on my radar now and again more than once. Isabel Allende has a new book coming out on June 6th as well, and I have never read anything by this author, but honestly, nothing has compelled me to read a work by her as much as this one. I'm not suggesting that none of them were compelling to me, but this one is incredibly compelling to me. It's called The Wind Knows My Name. And this is a dual timeline, and again, it feels like a tearjerker, but a historic timeline as well as in 2019. So it is the story of Samuel Adler, who is in Vienna in 1938, and of course that is the time of Kristallnacht, which was the annihilation of a number of Jews in one evening. Their family lost everything, but also their father was just disappeared during that time. So there was no sense in the moment of what had happened to him. So Samuel was a part of the Kindertransport, the train that took young children. If you haven't read The Last Train to London by, one of my favorite authors, goodness sakes, Meg Waite Clayton. How could I not come up with that? Meg Waite Clayton. She has a novel which is really good about the Kindertransport, but nevertheless, Samuel is transported to the UK, which is, of course, where most of the kids that were on the transport ended up. He arrives in the United Kingdom with the clothes on his back and a violin and nothing else. In this book, The Wind Knows My Name, fast forward to Arizona in 2019, and a family is fleeing from El Salvador and the danger there. And there is a small, young, blind girl who's, I think, around 7 years old, who is separated from her family as well. And so there is a immigration lawyer who is really trying to support this child and to find out what happened to her family, if she has other family members in the United States. She calls on a person that she knows, who can help her with this research, and they find another family member in the US, and that family member is employed by Samuel Adler. I tell you this because I think it's good for you to know this entire synopsis, and I think that there's much more to this than just this synopsis. I do think this is one of those stories that I love, that really all of the threads pull together to create a bigger, better, brighter conclusion than where we began. This is a a really, to me, a powerful, interesting synopsis. So this may be the very first that I read by Isabel Allende. And again, it comes out June 6th. Still on June 6th, Annabelle Monaghan has a new book called Same Time Next Summer. And I had researched this as a new release, and I wrote it on my list of anticipated reads because it was interesting to me. And then I recently listened to Sarah's Bookshelves, their podcast episode, where they talked about books that I think were most anticipated for them. This one was discussed, and I found myself being drawn in more and more to it. So when I make this list, I don't always talk about each one. I make a pretty extensive list, and then I decide which ones really rise to the top. But after listening to that podcast, this one rose more to the top than it had before. I would say this is a perfect summer read, which also made me want to look at it. It has a great bright cover. I think someone on the podcast said that it was released in paperback, which a lot of summer reads are currently being released straight to paperback. I think because of the places in which we read summer reads that maybe are beach-like or lake-like or something like that. So maybe we just kind of want them not to be as sturdy and dangerous in terms of getting water or sand or something on them. But nevertheless, I think this is a paperback release. It has a pretty good rating so far. I think it is a light-hearted romance for the most part, but it follows a woman who's actually engaged to someone else, but then goes on a trip to discover her first love from 14 years past, who broke her heart, is there where she is and is coming back into her life. And so now she has to really consider everything that she knows about herself and about love and about, who she's loved and who she wants to spend the rest of her life with, I'm certain. So it seems like a really difficult decision, but she and this former love spent every summer together from the time they were 5 till the time they were 17. And I think all of us can imagine, and maybe we don't have that level of continuity in our lives with one relationship or one person in our lives, but all of us can imagine like people that we know that we spent and did certain things with repeatedly, and then maybe were estranged for whatever reason or just lost track of each other. So I just think this might be a really nice summer read. I might add this to my TBR for summer if I can, kind of make room for it. There's a lot of good feedback on this novel and this particular author, I would say, from people that I typically follow and feel the same way about their reviews. Okay, another beach read on June 6th. I know they're really just flying off the shelves is The Bookshop by the Bay by Pamela Kelly. Again, a new author to me. This one is intriguing because it is sort of my dream trajectory in my life that's just never come to fruition. It follows Jess and Allison. They're both feeling disconnected for whatever reason to their work. Jess is a lawyer and Allison is a writer, as I remember, for a publication or a newspaper of some sort. And Jess leaves her community where she's living now with her daughter, who's 30. So she's an older woman, Jess, and as is Allison. She leaves because her husband's been cheating on her. She discovers this and she just needs a break. So she goes back to this community that she grew up in. And she relies on the fact that she can connect with Allison. And so together they both sort of discover, kind of this, where we are right now is not where we want to be. And they're rekindling their love of this particular community when they discover that someone is selling a bookshop there on the bay, by the bay. So they have this moment where they think, is this crazy? Can we buy this bookshop and run it? And so I think their daughters their daughters band together too and support them in this endeavor. And it sounds like a fun, light, kind of escapist read. Most romances are, but I think especially romances that are set in the summer, I think that authors just know that we need something light and sunny and airy, and we need to get out of whatever the kind of the residual effects of the winter and the spring might be. So I do think this would be one I would really, really like. Take a look at that one. The cover is fantastic. It's a perfect cover. Okay, I found a lot of books that come out on June 13th. But when I went back over the list about to do this video today, the one that really stood out to me the most is You Were Always Mine by Joe Piazza and Christine Pride. I think that this has a Jodi Picoult-like premise to it for me because it really examines a very difficult topic and two women who are entangled in this particular series of choices that they made that lead them to this current situation. I understand it's a book club pick for maybe GMA or for someone, but that wasn't what led me to find it. This cover is also so stunning in its color and its sort of framework, I guess. The way that it is created to me is, I don't know, it's intriguing. It makes me want to look in. So this follows Cinnamon Haynes, who is a Black woman who has been feeling like really a little bit disenchanted by the life that she has, which is really the life that she always wanted for herself. She's married to a great man. She has a job, she's very stable, and she's recognizing that she's kind of in that space of, what's next, or is this it? Like, is this all that there is in life? And then Daisy Dunlap, who is 19, abandons her child, and her child is found by Cinnamon. Now, Cinnamon is Black, and Daisy and her child are white. So the ramifications of a Black woman taking in a white child as, I think, what would likely be, the way the scenario sounds to me, a temporary foster placement while they try to locate the child's mother. The other piece of it is, as they're investigating and finding family that are now saying, we don't want this Black woman to raise our child, Cinnamon has some things in her past that maybe are not going to work in her favor if she were to want to keep the child. So I'm not sure if she does want to keep the child. I'm not sure, obviously, if the mother is ever located or what her story is. And I don't know if this is set in the South or not. I'm trying to remember. Let me look. I don't think it says. It doesn't say. But I do know that the family threatens to take custody. I also know that this is contemporary literary fiction, women's stories, women's experiences. I think it just sounds like something I would really like. It also sounds like a difficult read. This author can be hit and miss for me sometimes. That is The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and this one comes out June 20th. Riley Sager often takes a familiar plot from another horror or mystery novel and puts a different spin on it, and that is also the case for this one. This is a kind of a gothic horror novel that they're saying is a Lizzie Borden-like massacre story. So this is a woman who in 1929 allegedly hung her sister and with a rope and stabbed her father, and I think she killed her mother in some way too. She's never convicted for it. She denied that she ever did it. And much like Lizzie Borden did, she didn't really speak about it publicly to anyone else. And she never left the home in which these murders occurred. Fast forward to 1983, and Lenora is an older woman and she requires home health care. And so Kit arrives to this home that is really kind of falling apart to take care of this woman. It is my understanding that Lenora decides to tell Kit everything about what happened. So my understanding is that there's still a sort of a question about whether Lenora is really telling the truth to Kit. I think this is very similar to the Lizzie Borden story. There were many people who did not believe that she was innocent of killing her parents, but one will never really know, will one? I do think that this one is promising. I did not love The House Across the Lake, which was his last release, as much as I have loved some of his others, but I'm willing to give this a try because I think Riley Sager, with the exception maybe of one of his, has been an auto-buy author for me. I was really hoping he was a Book of the Month Club selection, as he often is, but not this time. Not this time. Another auto-buy author for me is Ruth Ware. I have liked or loved all of her novels. There was one, I think it was One by One, that I liked less than the others, but 0 Days promises to be a great plot, I think. It is about a woman named Jack, ironically, and her husband Gabe. And the only thing I really know about this is that Gabe is found dead, and Jack is assumed to have been the person that took his life. And she then escapes to try to find Gabe's killer. And it's supposedly a kind of a immediate, like, action-packed mystery thriller, like the kind that you've watched on television and in movies over the years, where the person is running for their lives and also trying to figure out who actually killed the person that has been murdered. So there's a lot of buzz around 0 Days, and then there are a lot of people that were kind of disappointed by the last one too and aren't sure that this is going to work, but I'm willing to give it a shot because I'm pretty loyal to Ruth Ware. Okay, another thriller. I know there's a lot of them, but this one comes out June 20th as well, and it's called The Spare Room by Andrea Bartz, who is the sister of Julia Bartz, who wrote The Writing Retreat, which I recently read. I've read nothing by Andrea Bartz, but I understand this is not her first novel, unlike the one that Julia wrote a couple of months ago. It came out. So this one is very steamy, I would say. Kelly is in Philadelphia during the pandemic. I don't think this is a pandemic book, but it is set in that time frame. And she's like lost everything. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have any friends. I think she had a relationship and the guy called it off. And so she reaches out to her best friend, Sabrina, from childhood. And Sabrina offers a spare room for Kelly to live in with her and her husband, Nathan. And once Kelly ends up in that home, she's very happy with the two of them. Everything seems to be going well. And one night, I guess she's starting to find herself somewhat attracted to one or both of them. But one night, there is a steamy, apparently, choice that is made by the three of them. And after that, they decide to open their marriage. And I think after that, there is a discovery that something had happened similarly to this before with this couple, and that woman is nowhere to be found. So the question is, are they predators? Is this a pattern? Did they kill the woman? It sounds like so fascinating to me. So I think because there is this LGBT aspect to it as well, it will probably be something that a lot of people want to pick up during Pride Month. But again, it comes out toward the end of the month. But it just sounds like, I don't know, it's a very unique plot, I would say. And I'm down for it. I think it's a little bit evocative. I think it's bold and in its sort of framework. And yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. Another one I heard about on the summer reading podcast episode for Sarah's Bookshelves is My Murder by Katie Williams. And as soon I was actually almost home. I was driving back from physical therapy, and she started talking about the plot of this novel, and I was immediately like, oh my God, this is it for me. So it follows Lou, who is a mom and pretty happy, and all of a sudden is killed by a serial killer. And Lou is brought back to life through a government project that brings people back to life who have been killed. So she's not alone in this group of other women who have been resurrected, if you will. And she now discovers that she's going to have to find out how she was killed. I don't know if I don't think she's being compelled to find out. I think perhaps the government is compelling her to find out how she was killed or to give them information about how she was killed. Nevertheless, speculative mystery thriller, right? Like a kind of a sci-fi project. But from what I gather, it's not set too far in the future, which for a lot of people, sci-fi, if it's set like vastly far from where we are, it seems a little hard to connect with the characters or hard to connect with the plot and the setting. But in this case, I think that it sounds like one that a lot of people could get behind because it's suspense and it's not quite as sci-fi as others would be. So in other words, not a whole different, universe, it's not a whole different country. It's pretty similar to where we are now. The cover of this, I think, is also very unique. And so I really think this is a must read for me. And it comes out June 6th as well, in case I didn't tell you that. And the last one I'm going to talk about today, this is a lot, is Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano. And I'm not sure about this one, but it is so weird. I really think I'm going to watch what other people say about it. But also, I'm going to start listening to podcasts and see if people have had an advanced copy and just see what the buzz is about it so that I know before I pick it up. But this one is interesting. Horror mystery thriller. So this woman whose name is Willow Stone, her son is found dead. And I'm not sure under what circumstances, but on the floor of his room, he writes the words Clifford Island. And she discovers that Clifford Island is in Door County, Wisconsin, not far from where she lives. And so she just can't sort of shake this curiosity about why he would have written the words Clifford Island on the floor of his room. So she goes there and she realizes that this is not a normal little town or a little island. Everyone is stuck on one particular day in 1994, so much so that they wear the clothing from that era. They watch the O.J. Simpson car chase over and over again. Like the same day repeats constantly, and they are just weird, and they're also evasive, and it's like they're hiding something from Willow. Sorry, I don't know why I called her Olive. So Lily Becker also lives in Clifford, and she's lived there her entire life, but apparently she's not sort of drawn in by this behavior or whatever it might be, this trance, whatever. I'm not sure what it is, but she's not having a whole lot of it. And she's determined to prove that, everything that they're doing and believing about their life is not true. But then Willow disappears after she's gone to the island, and her brother Harper comes to the island to try to find her and discover what's actually happening. This sounds like a fascinating plot. It has a really weird cover, as you can see. And yeah, I don't know. It might be it might be the strangest plot I've read in a while, but also very unique. No question, very unique. It has an average rating currently, but not a lot of ratings because it isn't even, out yet. So these are just advanced reader copies, but has an average rating of 4.13 stars at this point. And again, I just kind of would like to hear some of the buzz about it. I'm sure there will be buzz about it. I can't imagine that there wouldn't be before I decide whether or not Jimmy Giuliano's Dead 11 is right for me. But this is pretty speculative too. I would say speculative horror, whereas My Murder was speculative murder, suspense, mystery. Yeah, so I'm down for it, I think. We'll see. Okay, that is the end of my June anticipated reads list. Some of these will have come out before this video airs, but nevertheless, I think that this is a kind of a well-rounded, maybe a little heavy on the thriller, murder, mystery edge, but certainly some historical fiction here, some romance, beachy reads, and I think it is a good month. It feels like when summer comes, there's so many releases that come out. It's really hard to choose from the list because there's so many good things available. So we'll see what July looks like. Fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be a ridiculously abundant summer of reading for all of us. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would subscribe if you haven't already. Tell me what your anticipated reads are for June. Tell me if you have your eyes on all of these already or some of these already. Enjoy let's chat. Let me know what is most thrilling once you've read them or not. And as always, happy reading. Bye.